The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, we're going to get started here shortly. So we've got a chat window open for you guys to enter your questions in during the webinar. So we're going to do a Q&A session at the end. Thanks for joining us. We're going to start in just a moment here. Okay, everyone, we're going to start at 11:05 today. So we're going to give people just a few more minutes to join. But thanks for attending. And again, if you have questions throughout the webinar, we're going to use the chat window and then answer them at the end. So for those of you who just joined, we're going to wait until 5 after the hour to start. We're just going to give a little bit more time for people to join. And again, if you've got questions, we're going to be monitoring that chat window throughout the webinar. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the webinar. So thanks everyone for joining. This webinar is Salesforce apps for a moves management strategy. So we're going to be looking at apps that can help you with your moves management strategy, as well as some native nonprofit success pack functionality. All right, so this webinar is to help nonprofits on Salesforce better understand how their instance can drive better donor relationships and fundraising. So a really quick housekeeping note, we are recording this, and we're going to be sending the recording to all attendees within the week. So we hope to have time for some Q&A at the end. So again, we're entering all of our questions into that chat window, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end of the webinar. Also, just a quick side note that we're using Prezi for this presentation. I'm a fan, just so you know. You can check it out if you don't know what that is, but it's just a presentation tool. All right, so we're going to first introduce our speakers. So my name is Sarah Matheny. I work for Idealist Consulting. So Idealist Consulting is one of Salesforce's original nonprofit implementation partners. We've been working with clients for 10 years, and many of our employees and nonprofits have helped us understand the nonprofit need within Salesforce. We've got some expertise around that area. So I'm going to go ahead and let the others introduce themselves. So we'll start with Francis from Fast Forms.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm Francis, and I'm the technical sales lead from Fast Forms. But really, I wear multiple hats, including solution engineering and technical support. Our team here at Fast Forms is highly customer-centric, which means that I'm responsible for interfacing with our customers and bringing highly requested functionality back to our technical team. Fast Forms is the first 100% native form and survey builder for Salesforce, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, allowing your users to capture any information really quickly and easily. Although we've been around for just about 2 years, we've grown pretty rapidly because of how easy it is to build out forms and surveys using Fast Forms. And we love working with nonprofits. About 20% of our customer base is really comprised of NPOs. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Michael to introduce himself and his role at Wealth Engine.
Great, thanks. Hello, my name is Michael Lukic. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Wealth Engine. Wealth Engine, for those of you who don't know us, we're a wealth data and analytics company. We have a technology platform where we compile and serve up wealth and other data for over 240 million individuals in the U.S. We work a lot in the nonprofit space. We have over 3,000 clients. About 80 to 90% of those are in the nonprofit space, and many of our clients are
Michael, it sounds like you're having a little bit of audio trouble. You're dropping out a bit. So I think, why don't we move on to Seth, and we'll come back to you for another segment, Michael.
Okay, fair enough. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks. So my name is Seth Goddard. Thank you so much for allowing me to be in your ears this morning or afternoon. I am the owner and vice president of business development here at Predictive, one of the owners. Predictive is a Salesforce application partner. We have been on the App Exchange for 10 years now. 50% of our clients are nonprofits, and Predictive has been a proud sponsor of Idealist, Dreamforce Engagement Party. I have managed Salesforce instances at nonprofits, served as a director of communications, and now part of the Predictive's Pledge 1% program. I serve on the board of directors of Carbondale Arts. I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of the best move management practices I have learned, as well as a few iceberg tips of Predictive's native Salesforce functionality best suited for nonprofits. So it is a pleasure to be here.
All right, thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. Okay, so let's go over the agenda. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to do a real brief overview of what moves management is, and then we're going to do a little bit deeper dive into each stage of moves management and kind of highlight how each of these apps and partners can help you with each of those stages. And then we're going to jump to a what's next, and then finally the Q&A. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so introduction to moves management. So Salesforce is great at data collection, but in order to use it strategically, you need to think about your goals and what kind of data matters to you. So we're going to take donors as an example. So you get great data about donation amounts and trends through NPSP, but in order to grow, you likely need to be strategic about how and when you ask donors for donations. So moves management is the strategy to help you with this strategy around when to ask donors and for how much. So moves management refers to the process by which a prospective donor is moved from cultivation stages into solicitation and finally stewardship. So moves are really the actions your organization takes to bring in donors and establish relationships and then renew those contributions. So your organization is really the middleman between your donor and the change that your donor wants to make, ideally through your mission. So we'll cover what NPSP can do, but you'll likely also want to consider some third-party applications, which is why we've invited some of our partners into this webinar. So first we're going to do a brief run-through of what each of these 6 steps are in the moves management process. Some organizations use slightly different names for these steps, but we'll go through these steps as we've identified or defined them. So identify. So this step is identifying who are our major donor prospects and how can we find more prospects. This is just calling your system for all the folks that you can identify as major donors. Then we'll move into qualification. So qualify, does this prospect meet my minimum criteria for a major gift prospect? That's when you get into some of the quantitative aspects of giving folks ratings and deciding how much to ask them. Once you've done those steps, you're going to move into cultivation. So bringing your donor closer to your organization and finding out what his or her specific interests and passions are within your mission. Once you've done all of this homework, you're going to move on to solicitation. So soliciting your donor for a specific donation amount. And then sometimes lumped in with solicitation, but sometimes also brought out as its own stage is negotiation. So deciding how your donor will fulfill their commitment of a gift to your organization. And then finally, once they've become a donor or given a major gift, you can move them into stewardship. And this is when you're going to make them into an advocate. This is when you're making them feel like they're directly responsible for fulfilling your mission. So throughout the webinar, we're going to refer to our little lady on the side here, Donor Denise. So meet Donor Denise. She's going to appear throughout the webinar. She'll be nurtured up to a $5,000 donation. We're going to talk about all of the moves management strategy to get her up to that donation level. $5,000 is just a random number. That could be a different number for your organization based on what you consider a major gift. All right, so let's take a deeper dive into each of these individual steps. So for the first step of identify, I'm going to bring in Francis from Platforms. Francis, go ahead with it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sarah, for that succinct explanation of moves management. So in the identify phase, as Sarah mentioned, this is where you really search for and identify your prospective donors. So the big question that you need to answer here is, where do I need to look to find these prospective donors? A good place to start would be by taking a look at the people and organizations that have already donated to you in the past. So these donors have already declared that they want to support your organization, and that makes them great candidates for moves management. So you check Salesforce, you define a criteria to identify specific donors who have a higher probability of making a larger donation to your organization. For example, you can think about setting up a criteria based on how much a person has donated already in the past, or if they've shown that they really want to support your cause by volunteering on multiple occasions. The final output of the ID stage should really be a list of people that you want to push through the moves management process. And you can do that by potentially creating a campaign for it in your Salesforce CRM. So can we move to the next slide, please? All right. Fast Forms as a native Salesforce form builder can really be used at multiple stages of the moves management cycle. But as a precursor to the ID stage, it can help you capture the information that helps you identify the right subset of donors for moves management and bring all of that into Salesforce so that you can effectively report on it to create that list. So you can use Fast Forms on your website, for example, to accept that initial donation and be that initial point of contact. You could also set up some conditional logic on the form to decide when to automatically send a donor through to the moves management cycle based on the initial amount that they've donated. From there, it then becomes really easy to set up a campaign that contains a whole list of donors and pass that off to the qualification stage. So in reference to our donor Denise here, from our initial communication with donor Denise itself, we can gauge the amount of interest that she has in our cause by looking at how much she's donated in the past, or seeing if she wants to sign up for our newsletter or to be a volunteer. Using this information, we can pass her on to our moves management campaign and make her part of our donor list. Now we can also use Fast Forms to start building out donor Denise's profile at this point with some basic details, which can then be built on in later stages of the moves management cycle. So I'm now going to pass it off to Michael from Wealth Engine to give you some more details on how to qualify your potential donors.
Great, thanks. And hopefully now my audio is resolved. So, now we are moving to the qualification stage. And the qualification stage is really a way to better prioritize your potential prospects based on their qualifications so that you can qualify the promising ones and disqualify the ones that are not promising. In this stage, you organize your donor and prospect database, screen individuals to append wealth and donor data, segment and prioritize those individuals, and then determine the best outreach methods. We know that you have a finite amount of time and resources, and many times you're not going to be able to engage with every single person within your database. A lot of times you only know a person's name, address, and maybe if they've donated with you in the past. Which is why, in order to do the qualification stage, we recommend screening to help you learn more information about these individuals to inform the next steps. In simple terms, screening allows you to uncover more information on individuals within your existing database. Many people think of it in terms of finding wealthy individuals, but really it's about enriching the profiles of the people that you already know with additional data to help you better identify potential individuals in which to engage, to better segment your donor base, and to customize your outreach or asks. Screening is the process by which an organization will look at their existing donor base or a prospect database and run that against a data organization such as Wealth Engine to fill in any gaps. So you can fill in gaps like their propensity to give to charities, including who they've given to in the past, the financial capacity of an individual, such as their net worth or income, their affinity towards your cause, and even interests and passions that we have that data as well. So Wealth Engine can help organizations with this qualification stage through real-time screening directly within Salesforce. We know that many of the organizations that we work with are working directly within their instances to manage their donor databases. So when you have individuals within your database, you can pull in additional wealth engine data fields, such as their propensity to give, their estimated giving capacity, net worth, and these data fields are pulled directly into your Salesforce natively so that you can get all the custom functionality, such as reporting, segmentation, and building out campaigns. So showing a few screenshots here of our platform within Salesforce. You can imagine if you have a prospect within your Salesforce database. In this case, I have a gentleman up on the screen by the name of George Rubin, and we have his base information. By integrating Wealth Engine into your Salesforce instance, you can screen George and others without having to leave your database, and you can pull in that additional data that we mentioned, such as the net worth or income and other propensities to give. We pull in the most important fields into Salesforce for native use within the application, but if you want to dive deeper into George or any of the other profiles, you can click on him within Salesforce and go right into the Wealth Engine platform, allowing you to fully research George to drive better fundraising efforts. So what does that mean for our friend donor Denise? By screening her, we've found that she has a household income of over $250,000. She's donated several large amounts to other local organizations, and she has a high propensity to give. So she's a promising donor to engage. So now I'd like to move on to the next step of the process. So passing this back to Sarah from Idealist, who can show us how the cultivation stage works.
All right, so we've done a lot of homework on our donors and we've grouped them together. We know generally what each of them should be able to give, and we're wanting to cultivate them towards those gifts. So the cultivation stage is where you begin your strategic planning and outreach to these prospective large donors. You'll begin planning and making your moves to engage these donors. And the key questions here are really, how can I move this prospect closer to our organization, and what are his or her specific interests and passions? So in this stage, what you're doing is you're creating a strategy based on their readiness and capacity. So you're choosing who these top promising donors are, and you're creating a strategy of moves. So identifying all of those touch points your organization are going to have with these key donors. And then also, who is going to be doing these moves, these cultivation steps? All right, so let's take a look at some examples of these cultivation steps. So cultivation can look like a lot of things. It could be a tour of your facility if you have one. It could be an invitation to a board meeting or some other event, ideally without an ask involved at the event. It could be sending a birthday card or some other literature like an annual report or some sort of program-specific report. So all of these steps are considered cultivation because you're really getting the donor ready to be more invested in your organization, be ready to give. All right, so you're ready to cultivate. You're sitting in Salesforce. You're saying, how do I do this? So the Nonprofit Success Pack has something called engagement plans. It's a newer feature, but essentially it lets you track those moves. So you can create what's called engagement plan templates, which essentially let you create a set of tasks or moves that you want to apply to multiple donors. They're going to be the same steps you're doing with each set of donors. And so you can apply those to individual records within your database. All right, so this first screen here is setting up an engagement plan template. So the first screen you're going to come to is basically just giving your engagement plan template a name, deciding who's going to own tasks by default, whether that's going to be whoever created the engagement plan for that specific record, or who's the owner on that household account. Then you can also tell the system to skip weekends for task assignments and move those due dates to Monday or Friday. And then you can also check this checkbox in the bottom right to have the system adjust the due dates on tasks based on when tasks that are higher up in the hierarchy are completed. So if you want task 2 to be done 7 days after task 1, but you finish task 1 several days late, you want that due date to dynamically update. So once you've got your basics set up on your engagement plan, you'll create these individual tasks. So these individual tasks, you're going to give them some type, like a call or an email or other priority, give them a name and some comments. You can also set up some reminders on each of these tasks. So reminders are going to be those little pop-up windows within Salesforce, or you can choose to send an email reminder. The important thing to look at here is that we've got some nesting going on. So if you look, task 1 is the parent to task 1-1, and then it goes further down. And then all of these days later are going to be dependent on their parent tasks. So we've got our call donor as our parent task. That's going to happen 1 day after we assign the engagement plan to the household. And then 7 days after that, we're going to invite this donor to the tour. And then 2 days after the tour, we're going to send some literature specific to their interests. So really getting some dynamic action going on with those tasks where they're dependent on one another. So in the context of donor Denise here, so we've taken her through some cultivation stages by having the development director call her and perhaps walk through a canned script of questions. We've asked her to tour the facility, and she's gone on a tour and expressed some interest in specific programs. And then we did some follow-up by sending her the annual report, giving her some more literature there. So at this point, donor Denise is about ready for the solicitation stage. Let's move on to that stage. So the solicitation stage is where you make your ask. So this is when you ask for a specific amount and for a specific purpose. So after you've done all of your homework, you're ready to develop a proposal. So at this stage, you're developing a proposal and you are setting an appointment with the donor to make the ask in person. So there's a lot of literature out there on how to make an ask with a donor. I won't go over any of the nitty-gritty details that folks can provide you on that, but one of the pieces of advice that we have is make your ask and then let a little bit of silence hang after your ask. So ask donor Denise for her $5,000 gift and then don't say anything. We have a tendency to kind of have a nervous chatter after making an ask, but if you leave a little bit of silence there and let the donor fill the silence, that can often be a better strategy. So at this point, we've invited donor Denise to a lunch meeting and she has accepted it. And then we've made our ask for $5,000 and the silence is hanging in the room. So we're going to move on to the negotiation stage. So in the negotiation stage, sometimes the stage happens during your ask or during your solicitation meeting. Sometimes the donor needs time to think about it or go back and talk to their spouse about financial planning around making a large contribution. So let's say that this negotiation stage is happening afterwards. Your donor has said, I need time to think about this. So during this negotiation stage, this is where you can discuss the terms of your donor's gift. Are you open to making this gift in payments over a period of time? Are you willing to make this gift later in the year or over the course of a couple of years? All of those terms. And eventually you're going to get to a verbal commitment and potentially also a written commitment. So also in this stage, you want to consider making all of the terms of the donation more personalized to your donor. So for example, you could offer to have your donor's name on the building if this is a capital project. You could have the donor's name on some annual reports or some marketing materials, really getting a sense of what's going to align with your donor's values and negotiating some terms around recognition, or if they don't want recognition, if they want to be an anonymous donor, being sensitive to that. So donor Denise has committed to the $5,000 donation. She wants her name on the new facility and in marketing materials, which is doable. She's also wanting to pay her gift over 3 months. So hooray, donor Denise has committed to a large gift. So once we've gotten that gift on the books and perhaps gotten a formal written commitment for the gift, we can send her a donation page form for her to make her first payment, perhaps through fast forms. And then we can move her into the next stage, which is stewardship. So I'm going to hand off this stage to predictive response. Seth.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, this is the stage where you say thank you. You've gained an advocate, and the stewardship stage is where you can engage the donor throughout the year as a true member of your organization and gain valuable insights into how you can move more of your donors up to the level of Denise. In this stage, you say thanks digitally after the gifter arrives, as well as throughout the year with donor-specific content. When you collect the gift, and you can also gain valuable insight into your donor's journey. When you or your web-based donation system closes an opportunity or a donation in Salesforce, there is a specific date involved. Make use of that Salesforce data. In Predictive, we will create email ROI and web ROI records to connect the last email sent and recent web pages viewed preceding the donation date. We'll see an example of that data in a moment. If you don't have Predictive installed, you may want to work with your in-house Google Analytics expert and try and wring out some insights, though not necessarily connected to specific Salesforce contacts. And when that donation comes in, make sure to add Denise to your donor communication materials, whether that's a print or an email welcome series. Their gift is making an impact, and they need to know that. Predictive automation or your own manual Salesforce reporting process will add Denise to the appropriate Salesforce campaigns, a call campaign for the executive director to say thanks, an email welcome series for donors at her level, and that print postcard campaign to make sure she receives or save the date for an upcoming event. Now, donor Denise must not be forgotten. At this stage, she should find her name listed on the new facility and in marketing materials recognizing her gift. She is called by members of the organization throughout the year, and she receives a few tickets to the upcoming gala. With Predictive, you can include dynamic content based on donor level in your standard email newsletters. Even a simple sentence tailored to her membership level can be a nice touch to remind Denise of her importance to your organization while she reads your latest news. As her donor anniversary date comes up and is nicely recorded in Salesforce, you can use predictive automation or manual weekly, monthly reports to add Denise to a special drip email campaign which highlights your organization's achievements since her last gift and introduces your goals for the next year, and of course mentions the benefits of becoming a recurring donor. With Predictive, you can also run reports, as you see here, some of the data inside of Salesforce to determine what role your digital collateral may have played. You can now answer questions like, what was the specific email or web content the donor looked at before their donation? These insights can help you move more of your donors up to the level of Denise. And with Predictive, all of this is accomplished right from your Salesforce login, and you can begin today by installing from the App Exchange to start sending beautiful mobile responsive emails as part of your moves management campaign. All right, so now before we jump into the Q&A, we're going to bring Fast Forms in to talk about the great follow-up resources we have for this webinar.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Seth. I just want to take a moment to thank all of the presenters for a comprehensive overview of the moves management cycle. I think they did a really great job in sharing how to leverage both the NPSP and other Salesforce apps for your NPO if you're thinking about moves management seriously. We do have a part 2 to this webinar, so this is really not the end of great content. And the part 2 is basically a deeper dive into moves management with the demo jam. So Sarah is going to be demoing NPSP's engagement plans and levels, and that'll be followed by demos of Fast Forms, Wealth Engine, and Predictive Response. So if you want to sign up for this follow-up to get some great content, sign up at that bit.ly link that's on the screen. We've got the landing page ready to go. It's going to be on June 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's the follow-up for Apps for Moves Management Demo Jam. So we've got some great content. Be sure to join. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Sarah, who's, I think, going to take the Q&A on. Over to you,
All right,
Sarah.
thanks, everybody. All right, so we're going to jump into the Q&A session. I'm not seeing any questions yet in the chat window, but go ahead and enter any questions you have into the chat window. And we can start with maybe some questions that people typically have. So typical question number 1, how do I get the apps and do I need licenses? So all of these apps, well, some of these apps function a little bit differently than others. Some of them are native in Salesforce, so you just need to install them directly into Salesforce, but some of them have their own login portal where you're going to sign up for their services separately and then choose an integration with Salesforce. Yeah, so we're going to share some contact information after this webinar for how you can contact all of these specific app providers about how to install their apps. Another quick question we could go through. Looks like are you able to pull a report of engagement plans? Yeah, so engagement plans, because they're using native tasks within Salesforce, you can definitely pull a report of all of your engagement plan tasks that are assigned to your household accounts or to your opportunities, and look at kind of the stage that each one of these engagements is at. So definitely. We've got a question from Ashley. For identify, discussed how a set of criteria is used to automatically identify someone in Salesforce. Is that an app or built-in feature? So that's a question, I think, for Fast Forms. Francis, I think you were talking about this subject.
Sure, I can take that one on. So it completely depends on how you want to set it up. What I was explaining with Fast Forms is that all of that can be set up when you're capturing that information itself. So you can set up those criteria within Fast Forms, and that would automatically decide how to tag your specific submissions and list them in campaigns in Salesforce. You could potentially also do that in Salesforce by setting up any sort of automation, workflows, or triggers to say that based on certain criteria that are met, we're going to add people to certain campaigns, segregate them into different lists, and so on. So it can definitely be done out of the box in Salesforce, but Fast Forms just makes that entire process a lot easier.
And Predictive does something very similar. On the campaign itself, you can attach what we call campaign flow that will take any information from a contact record and allow you to use that like a gift date, like a gift amount, or even geography to move people into campaigns that are specific for them, whether that's email or, again, if the executive director has a call campaign, as soon as an opportunity closes, that information is recorded on the contact and Predictive will add that person to the appropriate campaigns.
Yeah, I think it's really important to highlight that, we've kind of plugged our app providers into specific steps in the moves management process here. But a lot of their tools can be used in many steps of the process, and you'll likely be using NPSP for all the stages. So one of the questions asked is, many of the things presented here are third-party apps. I'd assume all of these have fees, which is true. But how can moves management be done directly through NPSP? So we didn't take a super deep dive into specifically how NPSP handles moves management. Engagement plans is definitely a part of it, so making sure that you're capturing all of those specific moves you want to make with your donors through tasks. But there's also another feature called levels. So in the next webinar in this series, we're going to go into a little bit more depth around how you can use levels to assign someone a donor level based on their donation history, maybe within the past year or within the past 2 years or their entire donation life cycle. So levels and engagement plans, you can apply those at the household level. You can also apply them to individual opportunities. So you can say, I want to cultivate this donor for $5,000 and take these specific steps for that specific gift. And then you can qualify each of those opportunities at a specific level. It's kind of replacing some older concepts around membership. So Ashley's got a couple of follow-up questions. Do all levels of Salesforce have access to NPSP engagement plans and templates? I believe you have to be on version 3.81 or later. Don't quote me on that number exactly, but it is version 3. And then do engagement plans allow you to create different templates that you can assign to various donors based on specific criteria? Yes, absolutely. So levels and engagement plans can work together. So once a donor reaches a certain level, you can program into that level to say that this level equals this engagement plan and automatically assign it to that record. So there's some good integration going on there.
And the same thing with predictive. When someone is recorded as having given a certain amount, you can use that information in Salesforce to automatically place that person into the appropriate follow-up campaign or reminder campaign as their anniversary comes up. You can think about adding them to a higher donor ask campaign or specific events. Right? If you have a specific event that you want to invite people who have reached that certain level, you could automatically add them to that outgoing postcard or print campaign or email. And predictive doesn't really care whether or not it's a predictive email campaign or your print campaign. Will still add that person to any Salesforce campaign type.
Yeah, definitely. So really getting some of that automation built in is where it's going to start to make all of this donor management easier for your staff. Okay, so another follow-up question from Ashley. How do engagement plans interact with portfolio management? Yeah, so portfolio management, that has a lot to do with assigning donors to donor reps specific portfolios. So that may be done through ownership of household accounts. What I was showing on one of the screens previously with engagement plans is you can have the owner of engagement plan tasks default to the owner of your household accounts. So the person who is the manager on that account is going to get all of the appropriate tasks. So that's one way that engagement plans can kind of interact with portfolio management. Also, levels, which again we didn't demo today, but levels are going to help you segment into different donor pools based on donation history so that you can manage your portfolio based on your levels there. All right, so I'm going to give a couple more minutes for any more questions. anything you guys want to ask our partners about their tools, or any more questions about NPSP and moves management? I'll just give a few moments for folks to type if they want to. Okay, so we've got an app question here. So is fast forms related to form assembly? Are they different? Are they the same thing? Yeah, so they are different. Francis and or Dee, do you guys want to speak to the difference between your tool, fast forms, and form assembly?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. So, well, fast forms is a form and survey builder, and we're native to Salesforce. So, I mean, I think in terms of differences, really the major difference is that we are 100% native to Salesforce. So essentially when you're building out forms, it's from within Salesforce itself. And that gives you a lot of inherent advantages including ease of customization. So that I would say is probably like the major difference in terms of the ability and ease to create forms and bring that data into Salesforce. So yeah, I would say that's probably the major difference. Francis, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, not specifically with form assembly, but compared to any other form builders, fast forms really stands out because it has that native capability. All of your information gathered on fast forms automatically links back into Salesforce. It saves you from building out connectors and going through the hassle of integrating an application into Salesforce. And that way, it's kind of easier to use for even non-technical users to come in and build out quick forms and surveys and get information into Salesforce. Yep.
Yeah, and just as a high-level answer to that question, they're different companies. So FastForms is a separate company. Yeah. Okay, we've got another question from, looks like Ashley and Justin. Any advice on moving from spreadsheets about moves management into Salesforce? With all of these campaigns and segments, how do you manage overlap? Yeah, so a lot of information, a lot of people in different groupings based on what mailing list they should be a part of or what event they should be a part of. It can get confusing, absolutely. So without knowing exactly what your spreadsheets might look like, I can assume broadly that you've probably got some spreadsheets of your donors and what stage they may be in that process, and kind of some timeline information about when you want to move them into the next stage. So generally speaking, you can create like a high-level engagement plan that you apply to accounts where you annually apply all of these individual stages to folks. And this is a little bit less apparent in Salesforce Classic, but if and when you move into Salesforce Lightning, there's a lot of ways that you can see what stage someone is in based on their most recent activity. So there's a lot of tools within Lightning where you can see next steps and steps completed most recently. But generally, it's going to be with task management on the household level, or you could also optionally do it at the contact level. It looks like we've got a spreadsheet dropped in here. Okay, so do you recommend assigning engagement plans to each stage of moves management or any cultivation? Or only cultivation? Oh, I see what you're asking. No, I think you can use engagement plans really flexibly. I think you could have an engagement plan that does each step within moves management. That's more high level that you apply to your household accounts. And then you can have more granular ones that you're applying to specific gifts for cultivation. You could have one that's applied to your follow-up after a major gift, so making sure that your donor reps send thank you cards that are personalized, and make phone calls, and send out invites after a major gift. There's a lot of ways that you can apply engagement plans. So you can have templates that apply to a lot of different stages within this moves management process, and have a lot of granular detail. Can you assign an engagement plan to campaign members? Oof, I don't know if I've tried that. I know it's pretty easy to assign it to most objects. It would depend on if campaign members allows you to have a task assignment in general. My gut reaction is probably yes, but I would have to double check on that. Yeah, do you recommend assigning engagement plans to each step? What are some best practices for highlighting substantive interactions by development officers from every email and other touches? Yeah, so if you're wanting to kind of triage, essentially, the difference between your nitty-gritty steps and your high-level steps, I would recommend being really strategic about where you apply different types of engagement plans. So if you have engagement plans that are specific to cultivating a major gift versus the entire donor, I would apply those to opportunities. Whereas if you're wanting to apply engagement plans that are that more broad level, I would do that at the household level. So you want to separate how you're applying all of these tasks and have some thought process around what each of these templates does, what object they should be applied to. So you have a separation, it's not just tasks everywhere. Yeah. I think I skipped a question up here about campaign overlap. All these campaigns and segments, how do you manage overlaps? Yeah, it can get confusing when you've got a donor in 5 different segmentations, or you've got them in levels, you got them in mailing list campaigns, you got them in event campaigns. There are some little tools out there that you can use to help create mailing lists based on previous mailing list attendance and previous event attendance and excluding others. But yeah, it does become a bit of a burden when you've got data everywhere in your system. So again, thinking strategically about where you want to keep each of these pieces of information becomes really important. Otherwise, you start to get lost in just the amount of data you have. So keeping in mind that because you have this new levels functionality, levels you can keep at the opportunity level as well as the household and contacts level. So really thinking about where does it make the most impact for your organization, and identifying how you want to keep that data separate and what kind of reports you want to get out so that you're getting the right information in the right places. And then utilizing all of your campaign history to be able to pull future lists. There's a little application called Campaign Combiner. It's from an Australian consulting firm. It's a free application. I recommend checking it out, but it helps you combine and campaigns and campaign members from different previous campaigns and exclude campaign members from other campaigns. So you're getting the right segmentation in each one. Yeah, so Justin says we use red point, but the exclusions list becomes very long. Yeah, so you can start to get into a space where you've got a lot of criteria. You need to keep in mind, you know, don't bring in people who have the deceased checkbox checked, or they don't have the communication preference of no emails or something like that. It can start to become a little unwieldy, but what I usually like to suggest is getting a list of campaign members with all those criteria kind of pre-lined out. You have this comprehensive list that you can pull from, and so you don't have to create these complicated reports every single time. Yeah, and naming conventions on campaigns absolutely help with that. You could have a specific tag or phrase, like Justin's saying here, like AMR or AML within your campaign name so that you can sort those out in your reports. All right. So we have just a few minutes left. I do want to leave the floor open for any follow-up questions here. But it looks like we've covered some good content. And I think for those of you who are interested more in that in-depth NPSP stuff, definitely look forward to that next webinar in our series here, where we're going to do some demoing within Salesforce. So I'll leave the floor open just a little bit longer for some more questions that might come up.
Sarah, if you want to switch back to the slide that actually has the bit.ly link, that might be valuable for anyone who didn't catch it the first time around.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so that next webinar in the series, again, June 20th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, which is the same time as our webinar today. All right, so I think we're going to close out the webinar. I don't think I see, oh, just a question about the recording. Do we have an ETA when we're going to send that out? I think it's within the next week, but we're going to aim for tomorrow. And we're going to also send out some additional materials with that recording. So thanks so much for everyone for attending. Hopefully you got some good information out of this webinar, and we look forward to possibly seeing you with the next one. All right, bye everyone.